be something.
Can you speak to the use of blockchain in healthcare? You mentioned that in some of your remarks earlier. Just kind of curious where you see that going.
I've heard talk about it. Estonia is, the country of Estonia has a project where they are putting healthcare records on the blockchain. You probably have heard of that use case. So that if you're the patient or the user, you know who has looked at your record at what particular point in time. So if a specialist has to look at your record, then you know that they've looked at it in reality, and then maybe the insurance agency can see what has happened with your record. So that was one application. There was recently a contest. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was one of the government agencies that put out a contest for healthcare papers, and they selected 15 healthcare papers were selected as winners. If you Google 15 healthcare papers blockchain, HHS, yes, they were the sponsors. So there were 15 winners, and they all had different ideas about what to do with the blockchain and healthcare. And I just started to read them, actually, not too long ago. And some of them are about healthcare, some about insurance. But we're in the early stages. Another one that I'm aware of, a company that I know a little bit of. It's kind of healthcare, but it's really to do with maintenance of equipment. So they want to make sure that there is a record that this particular machine has had its service, its maintenance at a particular time. So they are using it as a proof of maintenance on an MRI machine or a CT scanner, where maintenance is very important and you can't skip that. And that way they can use it for that. So think about all the service, everybody in the service industries, they can provide that proof of service on a particular machine, where some device is attached to the machine, and when the service is done, then it's authenticated. And then you can imagine the service person accomplishing the service, and then the customer has a key, and then they say, okay, yeah, you did the service. And then together, when those two keys are matched up, then there's a trigger, yeah. It's a record on the blockchain that this machine has had that service. Yes?
Oh, thank you. You're going to have to break this down into layman's terms, your answer, okay? Mm-hmm. So think of blockchain from a corporate treasury manager's perspective, right?
Corporate treasury.
Right. If I am the corporate treasurer of a global company, I use a global bank as my clearinghouse because they mitigate counterparty risk on my behalf, right? So that I don't have to diligence every single dollar or currency that's coming to me. My clearinghouse does that. Can you discuss mitigating counterparty risk with blockchain, and then you're talking about an absence of diligence because it couldn't possibly be done on every counterparty. So what happens to that? Okay,
very good question. And this, I can give you two examples of exactly.
Speak in English.
I can speak in French too. I can give you two examples. This brings us to the subject of identity. Identity is very important for the blockchain. So there's been a proof of concept with particularly demonstrating that a catastrophe bond, it's a class of bond for catastrophe insurance, was done without a third party to check the counterparty validation. It was done on the blockchain. Why? Because the identity of the two parties is already checked from before on the blockchain. So why do you need a third party if you and I, if you trust me and I trust you? But
I've got 600 vendors. Right. I've got 15 currencies, 600 vendors, and a whole gigantic
That's fine. But all you need is a signal that says that I am a trustworthy person. And the blockchain will, from the blockchain will give you that signal that I am a trustworthy person, that I have the asset that you are going to buy from me. And the minute you say, yes, I want it, it's going to be transferred to you. Another example, a bank, Barclays in the UK, a big bank in the UK, did a letter of credit. You know what a letter of credit is, right? Somebody has to prove that they have the money, but they don't pay for it right away, so they have to do the way that letters of credit are done today is there's a lot of couriering involved. They will send, like literally, a letter of credit to say that this person has the money, so that when the supplier ships the products, then the bank of the person that receives it can then release the money. And that process takes a lot of time. But they did a $100,000 letter of credit on the blockchain between a farmer in Ireland that was selling butter and cheese to a country, another person in Africa. To talk about the extremes, in Africa that issued the letter of credit on the blockchain, and they authenticated the identity of that person buying it on the blockchain. And the transaction was worth $100,000. It was done. Because the blockchain will allow us to authenticate the identity and the reputation and the authenticity and everything you want to know about that person without knowing about them. All you want to know is that I'm trustworthy and that you can do business with me at the click of a button. We've been brainwashed to think that we need third parties and intermediaries to authenticate and to check everything about somebody else. But if you know a lot about me, like today, I got randomly checked today, coming in here at the airport in Toronto. I get that. We all get that once in a while. But I still don't. I have to renew my Nexus card so I can go in the fast lane. But I got randomly checked. But if I had the Nexus card, which is like pre-clearing, right? If I'm pre-cleared, I shouldn't be checked. And then that person didn't have to do what they did. And I literally had to do this to the back of my foot, and they had to check it. But if I was pre-cleared and I got my thing renewed, then they didn't have to do it. So trust the fact that there will be strong identification on the blockchain, as strong as a passport can give you entry into a new country or an airport. So the area of identity is very, very important to blockchain applications, but it has to be married with the application itself. And that's what we're going to see a lot of. I hope I answered the question, but we can talk later as well.
Thank you. Quick question. You mentioned in your presentation about tokens and values. Outside of efficiently transferring micropayments, where do you see that? Can you expound on that a bit?
Tokens and aside from transferring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, the example that I gave with the car service. So, suppose you can earn tokens, and you can spend them again on another service, like Steam. I mean, there aren't too many examples. I'd love to see more real examples. Steam, you can earn money by posting something that is popular, so you earn it. But you can also spend the money by promoting your own post. So suppose I want to publish another post tomorrow. I can say, it's the same way as you can spend money to promote a tweet, promoted content. You can have sponsored content on Facebook, but you have to pay for it. But in this case, you're paying for it from tokens that you've earned. You know, Facebook should be giving us tokens because they are monetizing us. They are monetizing our attention. What are all these ads for? They are for our eyeballs because they know our interests to the nth degree. And they're getting really better and really good at it. That's why they're making a lot of money. That's one of the reasons why Twitter is still not as good as the targeting, because Twitter does not use, Twitter uses a third-party company for matching interests, where Facebook has a lot more data and they can be more accurate. But if Facebook were invented in the day of blockchain, and maybe there will be a new Facebook that replaces them, they should be giving money back to us, or at least dividing this, spreading that wealth It's all about decentralization, and it's about spreading the wealth.
Hey.
The old model is centralization, and this applies to anything to do with the web. An example, Ethereum. The founders of Ethereum are not majority shareholders of Ethereum. Vitalik, who is the founder, the inventor of Ethereum, how much do you think he still owns of Ethereum? It's a public. I'm not telling you anything that is private. He owns less than 1%. It was all the co-founders owned less than 8% at the end. It's all up. This flips the whole model. I mean, talk about VCs scratching their heads because they are used to funding companies and they end up owning 30% of them when they go public. And that's going to become more and more difficult because companies can go public on their own. Have you heard, you know what ICO means? ICO, you know what IPO is, right? Initial price offering. ICO is initial cryptocurrency offering. So when Ethereum got started, they were one of the first and most successful ICO, and they raised $18 million out of thin air, from people like us here. Everybody contributed to them, and they self-funded themselves. Augur, another company in the prediction market, they self-funded themselves $5 million. And there's more and more companies that are ICOing, for lack of a better word. But be aware, some of them are not going to work out. I mean, that's what the DAO did. The DAO was a big ICO. It mushroomed to a value of $150 million. Because by the time they raised their 12 or 15 million Ether, the value of Ether started to go up. And they were worth $150 million before they knew it.
Hey, William, we were supposed to go till 5:30. There's a lot of questions. Do you want to keep going a little bit?
Whatever, I'm flexible. I can keep going.
You guys okay?
All right, we can maybe take 2 more questions and.
We've got at least 2.
All right.
Hello, William. Thanks for writing this book, and thanks for.
Sorry, I can't see you because of.
Oh, thanks for writing this book, and thanks for coming to Chicago. I'm going to touch, I guess, briefly on the Ethereum hard fork, and I have a related question. The hard fork, I can see both sides of the story, why they did it. In the pure sense of immutability, I mean, to me, the hard fork in of itself is proof that given enough political pressure, given enough economic pressure, given even like enough collusion between miners, that immutability in the pure sense of the word doesn't really exist as it relates to blockchains in the pure sense of the word. I know they're working on certain technologies to improve this and to fix that. When it comes to Bitcoin, just like a quick check today, China still controls, or Chinese companies still control over 50% of the mining power. Autocratic regimes have a proclivity to rewrite history. Is there a concern where we evolve in the future where autocratic regimes control the majority of the mining power? Like, is this a potential threat to public blockchains?
Okay, maybe it's a hypothetical question, and I will answer it anyways because if I could say, well, I don't answer hypothetical questions. No, I'm not like that. But I think the blockchain is all about, again, decentralization is very important. So the wisdom of the crowd always wins. And blockchains are really about decentralization, which means that not one entity can control anything. And because nobody will allow one entity, one country, one group of people to control one aspect of the blockchain. It's all about being equal. And right now they're playing ball. I mean, even if there are lots of miners,